The private investigator's hands were shaking as he handed me the medical report. Not trembling like someone cold, but shaking like someone who just discovered something that changed everything they thought they knew about right and wrong. "Mr. Lawson, your wife hasn't just been cheating on you. She's been slowly killing you. The arsenic levels in your blood samples from 4 years ago prove it. But that's not even the worst part." I stared at Owen Mercer, this thin man in his wrinkled brown suit who'd just walked into the diner where I'd been living on black coffee and whatever the waitress June took pity on me enough to comp. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been Ethan Lawson, respected business owner with 3 successful hardware stores across the state. Now I was sleeping in my pickup truck behind the loading dock of my original store, the one my father helped me build with his own hands 21 years ago. "What could be worse than my wife trying to murder me?" I asked, though my voice came out steadier than I felt. Owen pulled out another document. His finger pointed to a name I didn't recognize. Gavin Cross. This man is her husband. Her legal husband has been since 1999. "Your entire marriage is a fraud, Mr. Lawson. Every document she signed, every asset she claimed, every accusation she made in court. She played a 16-year con that was supposed to end with you dead and her $6 million richer." The coffee cup in my hand should have shattered from how hard I gripped it. But I just set it down carefully, the same way I'd been setting things down for 4 years, ever since the tremors started. Ever since Sabrina started making me those special protein shakes to help with my condition. My name is Ethan Lawson, and I'm 47 years old. A month ago, I buried my mother Evelyn on a rainy Tuesday in Brookvale, the town where I'd built my life, my business, my family, or what I thought was my family. My son Logan had just turned 15, all gangly limbs and his grandfather's stubborn jaw. My daughter Chloe was 12, quiet and watchful with her grandmother's sharp eyes that missed nothing. They were the reason I'd stayed silent when Sabrina handed me divorce papers at my mother's funeral. They were the reason I didn't make a scene when she announced to everyone at the graveside that she wanted everything. The $16 million mansion my father had left me, both vacation properties, half my business, and full custody of the children. "Your children deserve better than an alcoholic father who can barely stay conscious during a business meeting," she'd said loud enough for my Uncle Roy and Aunt Linda to hear, loud enough for my brother Brian and sister Megan to turn away in embarrassment. But I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol since Logan was born. The dizzy spells, the fatigue, the times I'd collapsed during Brookvale Chamber of Commerce meetings, or nearly passed out while teaching Logan to use a circular saw in the shop. Those weren't from drinking. According to the report Owen Mercer had just placed in front of me, those were from systematic arsenic poisoning administered by the woman who'd sworn to love and cherish me in sickness and in health. "How long do I have?" I asked Owen. "Because when someone tells you you've been poisoned for 4 years, that's the first thing you need to know. If you stop ingesting it immediately, years, decades, even the damage is reversible with treatment. But Mr. Lawson, if she realizes you know, if she gets desperate, she might accelerate her timeline." I thought about Sabrina in her black designer dress at the funeral, not shedding a single tear for the woman who'd welcomed her into our family, who'd given her my grandmother's pearl necklace on our wedding day. I thought about Judge Mason Whitaker, who'd ruled against me so swiftly it was like he'd written his decision before the hearing even started. I thought about my kids living with a woman who'd been slowly murdering their father while making them breakfast every morning. "She hired you to follow me," I said to Owen, "to document reasons to deny my visitation rights. Why are you telling me this instead?" Owen Mercer looked me straight in the eye. This small, nervous man who'd probably seen too much in his career of following cheating spouses and insurance fraudsters. "Because, Mr. Lawson, I have a daughter. She's 15. And when I saw the photos of your kids at their school, when I watched your son trying to call you from a phone booth because his mother had blocked your number from his cell, when I saw your daughter leaving letters at your store that she hoped you'd find because she wasn't allowed to contact you directly, I couldn't do it anymore. Some money isn't worth earning, Some clients aren't worth keeping. And some men, even when they're sleeping in their trucks and have lost everything, are still trying to be good fathers. Those men deserve the truth. The truth. Such a simple word for something that was about to destroy everything I thought I knew about the last 16 years of my life. But as I sat there in that diner looking at medical reports that showed how close I'd come to death, I realized something. The truth wasn't going to destroy me. The truth had just saved my life. Owen Mercer pushed another folder across the table. "There's more, Mr. Lawson. Your wife and Judge Mason Whitaker have been in communication for months. I have their text messages, their planned timeline, and proof of where your assets were supposed to go after your death. We can stop this, but we need to move fast. Your brother Brian is a prosecutor in Portland, right?" I nodded already, reaching for my phone. "Good," Owen said, "because what I'm about to show you is going to need someone who knows how to build an airtight case. Sabrina Lawson, or should I say Sabrina Cross, made one mistake in her perfect plan. She kept evidence, and I found it all. 3 months ago, I was standing in Oak Ridge Memorial Cemetery, watching them lower my mother Evelyn into the ground. The cancer had taken her quickly, 7 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. The doctors at Brookvale General had been stunned by how aggressive it was, how it seemed to consume her from the inside out before any treatment could even begin. My father Walter had passed 6 years earlier from a heart attack in his veterinary clinic, surrounded by the animals he'd spent 41 years healing. Mom never really recovered from losing him. She'd built her whole life around being Mrs. Walter Lawson, the small-town veterinarian's wife who baked pies for church fundraisers and never missed one of my baseball games growing up. The rain that October morning felt personal, like the sky had opened up specifically to match the weight in my chest. I stood there in my black suit, the one Sabrina had picked out for me at Macy's last year, telling me I needed to look successful for the business. My kids, Logan and Chloe, pressed close on either side of me. Logan kept straightening his tie, a nervous habit he developed recently, while Chloe held my hand so tight I could feel her small fingers trembling through her black gloves. My brother Brian had flown in from Portland with his wife Laura and their twins. He stood ramrod straight, prosecutor's posture, even in grief, occasionally wiping his eyes behind his glasses. My sister Megan was sobbing quietly next to me, her husband Eric rubbing her back in gentle circles. Uncle Roy Mom's younger brother, who still ran his cattle ranch outside town, kept his weathered rancher's hand steady on my shoulder. The whole town of Brookvale had shown up. That's what happens when you run 3 successful hardware stores that have employed half the town at one point or another. When you sponsor every little league team in the county and keep contractors supplied through good times and bad. Pastor Green was speaking about Mom's dedication to the church auxiliary, but I was watching Sabrina. She stood slightly apart from our family cluster, maintaining what she probably thought was a respectful distance, but felt more like emotional detachment. Her black Chanel dress was immaculate, despite the rain, protected by a designer umbrella that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. She kept checking her phone, typing with one manicured thumb while supposedly mourning my mother. Evelyn Lawson was a pillar of strength, Pastor Green was saying. Even in her final days, she worried more about others than herself. She pulled me close just last week and said, "Pastor, look after my Ethan. Something's not right, but he can't see it. A mother knows." Those words hit me strange at the time. Mom had been on so much morphine those last days, saying things that didn't always make sense. She'd talked about seeing Dad waiting for her, about birds at the window that weren't there, about Sabrina's smile never reaching her eyes. We'd dismissed it as the cancer talking, the medication making her paranoid. Sabrina hadn't visited Mom once during those 7 weeks in the hospital. Always an excuse, ready, a charity board meeting, a yoga retreat she couldn't cancel, a book club obligation. "Your mother never really liked me anyway," she'd said one night, adjusting her face mask in our marble bathroom mirror. It's better if I remember her healthy. But Mom had loved Sabrina, at least at first. She'd welcomed her into the family with open arms 16 years ago, had helped plan our wedding down to the last detail. It was only in the last 4 years that Mom had grown quiet around my wife, watchful in a way that made family dinners tense. The same 4 years I'd started having my episodes. Ethan Sabrina said just as the pastor finished the final prayer. "We need to talk." Her timing was so calculated it took my breath away. The crowd was starting to disperse but hadn't yet ensuring maximum witnesses. My mother's casket hadn't even been fully lowered. "Can it wait?" I whispered, gesturing at the grave where cemetery workers stood respectfully aside, waiting to complete their task. "Actually, no." She pulled out an envelope from her designer purse, the Hermes bag I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, when I could still access my accounts freely. "You've been served." My brother Brian stepped forward immediately, recognizing legal documents from 30 feet away. "Sabrina." "This is neither the time nor it's the perfect time," she interrupted, her voice carrying across the cemetery. "Everyone who matters is here to witness that Ethan has been properly served. I want the house, both vacation properties, half of all business assets, and full custody of Logan and Chloe." Aunt Linda gasped. Uncle Roy's grip on my shoulder tightened. Chloe started crying and Logan pulled her against him, his 15-year-old frame trying to shield his little sister from what was happening. On what grounds, Brian demanded, his prosecutor voice emerging despite the setting. Sabrina smiled, and in that moment, I finally saw what my dying mother had seen. The smile was perfect, practiced, and completely empty of warmth. Alcoholism, emotional neglect, and mental instability that endangers the children. I have documentation of everything. The divorce papers felt heavier than the shovelful of dirt I'd just thrown on Mom's coffin. Sabrina didn't even wait for people to leave before launching into her demands. She stood there under her designer umbrella, treating my mother's graveside like a courtroom. Her voice cutting through the rain with practiced precision. "I want the house, both vacation properties, half your business assets, and full custody," she announced, loud enough for my Aunt Linda to gasp audibly. "The kids deserve a stable parent, not someone who works 80-hour weeks and drinks himself to sleep." "I don't drink," I said, stunned. The accusation was so absurd I couldn't even process it properly. "You know I haven't touched alcohol since Logan was born. Tell that to the judge. I have documentation of your alcoholism, your anger issues, and your neglect of the children." She smiled, then actually smiled at my mother's graveside while my mother's body wasn't even fully in the ground. "My lawyer says, with your history of erratic behavior and those medical episodes you've been having, no court will give you custody." See. The medical episodes, the dizzy spells that started 4 years ago right after our 13th anniversary trip to Sonoma Valley. The unexplained fatigue that 3 different doctors couldn't diagnose. Each one suggesting it might be stress chronic fatigue syndrome or early onset neurological issues. The tremors that made me drop tools at work, that forced me to step back from handling power equipment, that made me look weak in front of my employees. Sabrina had been so concerned, always making me special protein shakes with organic ingredients she ordered from exclusive health stores. She'd started adding vitamins to my morning routine. Little white pills, she said, would help with my energy levels. "This is insane." Brian stepped forward, rain streaming down his glasses. "Sabrina, Ethan built his business from nothing. He's never had a drinking problem. Everyone here knows that. Everyone here knows what Ethan wants them to know." Sabrina countered, addressing the crowd now like she was performing. "But they don't see him at home passed out in his study. They don't see the empty bottles hidden in the garage. They don't see the children crying because Daddy forgot to pick them up from school again." "That's a lie," Logan shouted suddenly, his voice cracking with adolescent rage. "Dad never forgot us. You're the one who changed the pickup schedule and didn't tell him. You're the one who Logan, sweetheart." Sabrina's voice turned syrupy sweet. "You're upset about Grandma. You don't know what you're saying. Over the next 3 weeks, everything unraveled with a speed that felt orchestrated. My lawyer, Harold Benton, had practiced in Brookvale for 30 years, but he seemed out of his depth against Sabrina's Portland legal team. The first hearing was scheduled for just 5 days after the funeral. Judge Mason Whitaker, a man I'd never met despite living in the same town for 2 decades, presided with obvious hostility toward me from the moment I walked in. "Your Honor," Harold argued, Mr. Lawson built his business from nothing. He employs 45 people in this community. He's a pillar of Brookvale, a pillar who can't seem to stay conscious during important meetings. Sabrina's lawyer, a shark named Victor Ames, countered smoothly. He presented video from 3 months ago, a Brookvale Chamber of Commerce presentation where I'd nearly passed out during my speech about supporting local businesses. This man operates heavy machinery, drives vehicles, and supposedly cares for children while clearly impaired. The video was damning. I watched myself on the screen, gripping the podium, sweat pouring down my face, my words slurring not from alcohol but from something I couldn't explain. 2 attendees had rushed to catch me when I started to fall. I was sick. I protested. "I had the flu that week. According to medical records, you've had the flu 17 times in the last 2 years. Victor Ames responded, producing documentation I didn't even know existed. Or was it food poisoning or exhaustion? The excuses change, but the pattern remains. Ethan Lawson is unfit to parent. Sabrina testified for 2 hours, tears streaming down her face as she described my deterioration. She painted a picture of a man who'd become increasingly unstable, paranoid, and aggressive. She claimed I'd accused her of poisoning me once during one of my delusions, and that she'd been living in fear ever since. He told me I was trying to kill him. She sobbed to the judge. Can you imagine living with someone that paranoid? I was terrified for our children. The thing was, I had said that once 6 months ago after a particularly bad episode. I'd been joking darkly after throwing up for the 3rd time that week. Are you trying to poison me? I'd asked, attempting to make light of how sick I'd been feeling. She'd laughed and kissed my forehead, told me I needed to rest more. Judge Mason Whitaker awarded her everything in the temporary orders, the $16 million mansion my father had left me, the house where Logan had taken his first steps, in the kitchen where Chloe had learned to read in the library, the lake house where I'd taught both kids to fish using the same poles my father had taught me with, the mountain cabin where we'd spent every Christmas until this year when Sabrina had insisted on going to Vail instead. I was given 3 hours to pack personal belongings under sheriff's supervision. Deputy Mark Delaney, who I'd known since high school, couldn't meet my eyes as he watched me throw clothes into a duffel bag. I'm sorry, Ethan, he muttered. This isn't right. I lived in my Ford pickup for 3 weeks, parking behind my original hardware store on Oak Street. My fortune was frozen during asset evaluation. My business accounts were locked pending investigation of financial misconduct that Sabrina had alleged but couldn't specify. I ate 1 meal a day at Juness Diner when I could afford it, showered at the truck stop outside town, and tried to figure out how my life had imploded so completely. My kids were told I was getting help for my problems. Sabrina had enrolled them with a therapist who specialized in parental alienation syndrome, though it seemed like the only parent being alienated was me. My calls went unanswered. My texts were blocked. When I tried to attend Logan's baseball game, security removed me because Sabrina had filed a restraining order claiming I was unstable and potentially violent. Brian wanted me to come to Portland to stay with him and Laura while we figured out next steps. Something's not adding up. He kept saying this is too coordinated, too perfect. It's like she had this planned, but I couldn't leave Brookvale. Something felt fundamentally wrong about everything. The timing of the divorce papers at Mom's funeral, Judge Mason Whitaker's obvious bias despite never having met me, Sabrina's confidence that she'd win everything. She wasn't acting like a woman afraid of her husband. She was acting like someone who knew exactly how every scene would play out. On day 24 of living in my truck, that's when Owen Mercer knocked on my window with answers I wasn't prepared to hear. One rain-soaked evening, someone knocked on my truck window. The sound jolted me awake from another restless attempt at sleep in the driver's seat. A thin man in a wrinkled suit stood there holding a manila folder against his chest to protect it from the downpour. He looked nervous, glancing around the empty parking lot behind my hardware store, like he expected someone to jump out from behind the dumpsters. "Ethan Lawson. I'm Owen Mercer. I'm a private investigator." My first instinct was anger. "If Sabrina sent you to harass me or document more of my supposed instability, you can tell her she's already taken everything. She hired me to follow you. Yes, to document any behavior that might endanger your visitation rights." He shifted uncomfortably, rain dripping from his thinning hair. "But Mr. Lawson, I found something else. Something that made me quit her employment immediately. Can we talk somewhere private?" We met at Junet's Diner on Route 52, the one place in town that stayed open all night and asked no questions. June herself brought us coffee without my having to order, giving Owen a suspicious look before retreating to the kitchen. The diner was empty except for a long-haul trucker eating pie at the counter. Owen spread documents across the cracked vinyl table with the precision of someone presenting evidence in court. "Your wife has been purchasing arsenic-based rat poison in small quantities from different stores for 4 years," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Always cash, always wearing disguises that she thought would hide her identity. Baseball caps, sunglasses, different wigs, but security cameras don't lie. Mr. Lawson, I've matched her facial structure, her gait, even the way she holds her purse on her left shoulder." He showed me printouts from security footage. Sabrina at a hardware store in Clearwater 55 mi away. Sabrina at a farm supply store in Visalia. Sabrina at a grocery store in Fairford. Different hair colors, different clothes, but unmistakably my wife buying rat poison. The dates went back 4 years right after our Sonoma Valley anniversary trip, but that's not all. Owen continued, pulling out another set of photos. "This man here, the one she's meeting at the Clearwater Motel every Thursday when she tells you she's at book club, his name is Gavin Cross." The photo showed Sabrina embracing a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit. They were kissing in one photo, entering a motel room in another. My stomach turned, but not from jealousy. Something about the man's face seemed familiar. "They've been having an affair?" I asked, though even saying it out loud, that didn't feel like the whole truth. Owen shook his head slowly. "Mr. Lawson Gavin Cross isn't her lover. He's her husband, her legal husband. He produced a marriage certificate from Washoe County, Nevada, dated August 14th, 1999. She never divorced him. Your entire marriage is legally void. You were never actually married." The coffee cup rattled against the saucer when I set it down. 16 years, 2 children. Everything we'd built together was based on a lie so fundamental I couldn't process it. I also found this. Owen continued showing me bank records. "She's been transferring money to an account in the Cayman Islands for 4 years. Small amounts from your joint accounts, but they add up to nearly $2.4 million. The account is jointly held by her and Gavin Cross." "Why are you telling me this?" I managed to ask. "She's paying you." Owen looked me in the eye. Then this nervous, thin man who'd probably seen too much in his career. "Because I have a daughter, Mr. Lawson. She's 15, same age as your boy, near enough. And when I saw the photos of your kids at their school, when I watched your son trying to call you from a phone booth outside the grocery store because his mother had blocked your number from his cell. When I saw your daughter leaving letters at your store's door that she hoped you'd find because she wasn't allowed to contact you directly, I couldn't continue. Some money isn't worth earning." He pulled out another folder. This one filled with medical documents. "I had a friend who works at a lab test. Some items from your house. Items Sabrina didn't know I collected when I was supposedly investigating you. Your protein powder was laced with arsenic. So were those special vitamins she gave you. The doses were carefully measured, Mr. Lawson. Enough to make you sick, to create symptoms that would make you look unstable and unreliable, but not enough to kill you quickly. She's been poisoning you, slowly creating a medical history that would support her divorce claims. I thought about every morning for 4 years. Sabrina bringing me my protein shake with a kiss on the cheek. Drink up, honey. It's got extra vitamins for energy. The way she'd watched me drink it, never leaving until I'd finished every drop. We need blood samples from the last 4 years. I said my mind suddenly clear, despite the magnitude of what I was learning. Any doctor visits where they drew blood. The life insurance physical I remembered suddenly. Sabrina insisted I get a new $6 million policy 4 years ago. Said it was important for the kid's future. They did complete blood work. Owen nodded. I already pulled those records. The arsenic levels from 4 years ago show the poisoning had just begun. If we can get your current levels tested and compare them, we have medical proof of systematic poisoning. I called Brian immediately. It was past midnight in Portland, but he answered on the second ring like he'd been waiting for my call. Brian, I need you to listen carefully, I said. I'm at June's Diner with the private investigator. Sabrina has been poisoning me with arsenic for 4 years, and she's legally married to another man. There was silence on the other end. Then Brian's prosecutor voice kicked in. Don't move. Don't go anywhere alone. I'm catching the first flight out. Ethan, we need to document everything immediately. If she realizes you know, she might try to accelerate her timeline or destroy evidence. Owen leaned forward. There's more, Mr. Lawson. I have text messages between Sabrina and Judge Mason Whitaker. They've been planning this for months. The judge is getting a cut of your estate after your death, which according to their messages was supposed to happen within the year. How did you get their text messages? Sabrina gave me access to her phone records to help document your stalking behavior. She didn't realize that access goes both ways. Owen pulled out printed transcripts. She's not very tech-savvy. Neither is the judge. One message from Sabrina to Judge Mason Whitaker stood out. Once Ethan's dead from his drinking problem, we split everything 3 ways. You, me, and Gavin. The kids inherit nothing thanks to the will I had him sign last year when he was barely conscious from the poisoning. I remembered that day. I'd been so sick I could barely hold a pen. Sabrina had said it was just updating beneficiaries for insurance purposes. We need to move fast. Owen said, I've made copies of everything. 1 set for you, 1 for your brother, 1 in a safety deposit box at Pioneer Trust Bank under my name. If anything happens to either of us, June has instructions to take that key to the FBI field office in the state capitol. June appeared with more coffee, giving Owen an approving nod. About time someone helped Ethan, she said quietly. That wife of his never did sit right with me. Too perfect, too polished. And the way she'd watch him eat when they came in here like she was studying him gave me the creeps. As I sat there in that diner, surrounded by evidence of a conspiracy to murder me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 4 years. Clarity. The fog that had clouded my thinking, the exhaustion that had weighed me down, the tremors that had made me doubt myself. It all had an explanation. I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't a bad father. I was a man who'd been systematically poisoned by the person he'd trusted most, and now I had the proof to fight back. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread through Brookvale like wildfire that Ethan Lawson had called an emergency hearing with evidence of attempted murder. Sabrina sat with her lawyer, Victor Ames, still playing the wronged wife, wearing the pearl necklace my mother had given her on our wedding day. The pearls that had belonged to my grandmother, passed down through generations, now resting on the throat of a woman who'd been slowly killing me. Judge Eleanor Park presided, a stern woman from the state capitol that Brian had managed to get assigned after filing a judicial misconduct complaint against Judge Mason Whitaker. Whitaker himself sat in the gallery, trying to look unconcerned, but sweating through his expensive suit. Your Honor, Brian stood, having taken over as my counsel with his prosecutor's precision. We have evidence of attempted murder, bigamy fraud, and conspiracy involving the respondent Sabrina Lawson, who is actually Sabrina Cross, and extending to members of this county's judicial system. Sabrina's lawyer jumped up. This is outrageous, Your Honor. Mr. Lawson is clearly having some sort of breakdown, making wild accusations. Sit down, Mr. Ames, Judge Park commanded. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence. We'll proceed. Owen Mercer testified first, walking through his investigation with methodical precision. He presented security footage from 18 different stores showing Sabrina purchasing rat poison over 4 years. Each purchase was small under the radar, paid in cash, but together they amounted to enough arsenic to kill several people. The purchases follow a pattern Owen explained, pointing to a chart. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, at stores in a 55-mi radius, but never the same store twice in a 6-month period. This shows premeditation and careful planning. Then came the marriage certificate. Brian presented it with a flourish that would have been theatrical if it weren't so damning. Sabrina Ellis married Gavin Cross in Carson City on August 14, 1999. No divorce was ever filed. Her marriage to my client on June 19, 2010, is legally void. She has been committing bigamy for 16 years. That's impossible. Sabrina stood up, her composure cracking for the first time. I divorced Gavin in 2000. Then please produce the divorce decree, Judge Park said calmly. Sabrina turned to her lawyer, whispering frantically. Victor Ames shuffled through papers, his confidence evaporating. We'll need time to locate those documents, Your Honor. You'll have no such time, the judge replied. We've subpoenaed records from all 50 states. No divorce exists. The toxicology reports came next. Dr. Alan Pierce from the state toxicology lab had tested my blood samples from the insurance physical 4 years ago, compared them with current samples, and analyzed the protein powder and vitamins Owen had collected from my house. Mr. Lawson has been ingesting approximately 0.6 milligrams of arsenic daily for 4 years. Dr. Pierce testified, this dosage is carefully calculated. It's enough to cause severe symptoms, tremors, fatigue, cognitive impairment, temporary paralysis, but not enough to trigger acute poisoning that would be immediately detected. This is what we call chronic arsenicosis. It mimics many other conditions, making it almost impossible to diagnose without specific testing. And what would have happened if Mr. Lawson had continued ingesting these amounts? Brian asked. Within another year, likely sooner organ failure and death. It would have appeared to be natural causes, perhaps liver failure that could be attributed to alcoholism, especially given the medical history of symptoms that had been documented. But the real shock came when Owen revealed what else he'd found. Mr. Cross owns a company called Vital Core Labs, Inc. Owen explained producing corporate documents. They manufactured dietary supplements. Specifically, they created a custom blend for Mrs. Cross that contained controlled doses of arsenic designed to mimic chronic fatigue syndrome and neurological decline. Here are the shipping records to the Lawson residence. That's ridiculous. Sabrina stood up again. I would never Is that why you took out a $6 million life insurance policy on your husband without his knowledge? Brian presented the documents. Forging his signature, making yourself the sole beneficiary. The policy that specifically includes a suicide clause that would still pay out if Mr. Lawson died from complications related to alcoholism. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Park banged her gavel for order. There's more, Owen said quietly, and the room fell silent. Mrs. Cross wasn't working alone. He produced phone records between Sabrina and Judge Mason Whitaker. Text messages planning how to rule on the divorce, how to ensure I got nothing, how to make sure I looked unstable enough that no one would believe me if I suspected anything. Brian read one aloud. From Sabrina Cross to Judge Whitaker, dated 2 weeks before the divorce filing. Once Ethan's dead, we split everything 3 ways. You, me, and Gavin. Make sure the divorce gives me everything so his family can't contest the will. Another message from Whitaker to Sabrina. The restraining order is ready to sign whenever you file. I'll make sure he can't even get near the kids. No one listens to a crazy deadbeat dad. Judge Mason Whitaker was in the gallery. He tried to leave, but two bailiffs blocked his path on Judge Park's signal. Your Honor, Victor Ames was standing briefcase already in hand. I need to withdraw as counsel. I was not aware of any of this and cannot continue representation. Sabrina's facade finally shattered completely. She turned to face me, her eyes wild with rage. He was supposed to be dead by now. 4 years of careful doses, measuring every morning, watching him stumble around like a pathetic fool, and he just kept surviving. Do you know how exhausting it was pretending to care while he got weaker? Having to act concerned when he collapsed at that stupid Brookvale chamber meeting, playing the worried wife while knowing I was causing every symptom. She laughed, a sound that made everyone in the courtroom recoil. The perfect crime, they said. Gavin promised it would be perfect. Make him look like a drunk document, his decline, take everything in the divorce, and then watch him die alone in that truck. But you just wouldn't die, Ethan. You just kept breathing. The court reporter captured every word, her fingers flying across the keys. And my mother, I asked, standing for the first time since the hearing began. Did you kill her too? Sabrina's smile was vicious. Evelyn was getting too suspicious. Always watching me make your shakes. Hey, asking questions about your health. But cancer, that was just lucky timing, though I did make sure she couldn't talk to you alone those last weeks. Wouldn't want any deathbed confessions ruining our plans. Judge Eleanor Park had heard enough. Bailiffs arrest Mrs. Cross and Judge Mason Whitaker. Mr. Lawson, you have an emergency order of protection effective immediately. Mrs. Cross is to have no contact with you or your children. All previous orders from Judge Mason Whitaker are vacated. Your assets are unfrozen, your properties returned, and you are granted emergency full custody of your minor children. As they led Sabrina away in handcuffs, she turned back one more time. The kids know Ethan. They've known for months that Mommy was making Daddy sick. But they were too scared to tell anyone because I said the court would take them away forever if they did live with that. The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. My children had been living with this knowledge, carrying this burden, while I'd been sleeping in my truck, unable to protect them. But they were safe now, and I was alive. Against all odds, despite 4 years of systematic poisoning, I was alive to fight for them. The courtroom began to empty, but not before several people from town approached me. Some apologized for believing Sabrina's lies. Others admitted they'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't known what to do. June from the diner gave me a fierce hug and whispered, I knew that woman was poison the first time she walked in. Brian gripped my shoulder as we watched them load Sabrina and Whitaker into separate police cars. It's over, Ethan. You won. But I was already thinking about Logan and Chloe, about the conversation we'd need to have, about the healing that would need to begin. The victory felt hollow, knowing my children had suffered in silence, but at least now we could start putting the pieces back together. Sabrina and Gavin were both sentenced to 26 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. Judge Mason Whitaker got 16 years and was disbarred, his reputation destroyed in a single afternoon. The marriage was annulled since it had never been legal anyway. I got my kids back, my properties back, and most importantly, my health back. The arsenic damage was largely reversible with treatment. Dr. Alan Pierce. Dr. Alan Pierce started me on chelation therapy immediately, and within weeks, the tremors began to fade. The fog that had clouded my thinking for 4 years lifted like morning mist burning off in sunlight. But the real revelation came from Logan and Chloe when they finally came home. We sat in the living room of the house that had almost become my tomb. The same room where Sabrina had served me those poisoned shakes every morning. I'd had the furniture replaced, unable to look at the couch where I'd collapsed so many times, where she'd pretended to nurse me back to health while slowly killing me. We knew something was wrong, Dad. Logan told me, his 15-year-old voice steady but his hands shaking slightly. Mom would make your special shakes, then wash the blender 3 times with bleach. She told us it was because of your allergies, but it seemed weird. She never washed our dishes like that. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, though I kept my voice gentle without accusation. She said if we told anyone about the special shakes, the court would take us away forever. Chloe explained, curling into my side like she had when she was younger. She said we'd be put in foster care and never see you or each other again. She showed us articles about kids who got separated from their families. My heart broke thinking about the fear they'd lived with, watching their mother poison their father, threatened into silence by the very person who should have protected them. We tried not drinking the orange juice she gave us after we saw her put powder in yours, Logan added. We'd pour it out when she wasn't looking or pretend to drink it. We didn't know what else to do. My kids had been protecting themselves while I couldn't protect them. They'd watched their mother slowly poisoning me and found ways to survive. 2 children navigating a nightmare while maintaining their school grades and pretending everything was normal. Owen Mercer became a family friend after the trial. The only private investigator I know who gave up a lucrative client because his conscience wouldn't let him continue. He now runs a firm specializing in domestic abuse cases where poisoning is suspected. He told me he's uncovered 7 similar cases in the past year alone. It's more common than people think, he said over dinner one night. Slow poisoning. It's the perfect crime if no one suspects it. The victim looks crazy, unreliable, sick, who believes a stumbling, trembling man who says his wife is trying to kill him. Uncle Roy, who'd stood by me at Mom's funeral with his steady rancher's hand on my shoulder, told me something that haunted me. Evelyn knew something was wrong. The week before she died, she made me promise to watch over you. She said, Roy. Sabrina smiles with her mouth, but not her eyes. She's dangerous, but Ethan can't see it. The love we have for people can blind us to what they really are. Even dying of cancer, Mom had sensed the danger I couldn't see. Her intuition sharpened by decades of reading, people had picked up on what I'd missed completely. Brian moved his family from Portland to help run the business while I recovered. The hardware stores had suffered during my decline, but the community rallied around us once the truth came out. Sales increased by 45% in the first month after the trial. People going out of their way to support us. You gave us jobs when we needed them. Old Ed Parker told me buying supplies he probably didn't need. Now it's our turn to help you. Megan brings her kids over every Sunday for dinner. The house that almost became my tomb is now filled with actual family, with laughter that isn't calculated, with love that isn't poisoned. We cook together. No one person controlling the food. Everyone contributing something to the meal. It's become our tradition, our way of reclaiming what Sabrina tried to destroy. Sometimes customers who remember the headlines ask how I missed the signs. How could someone not know they were being poisoned for 4 years? The answer is simple. When someone you love hands you a glass of water, you don't check it for poison. You just drink. When your wife brings you breakfast in bed, you don't test it for arsenic. You say thank you. When the mother of your children says she's worried about your health, you believe her. Trust isn't stupidity. It's humanity. The fact that some people exploit that trust doesn't make trusting wrong. It makes them evil. But now I know better. Evil doesn't always announce itself with obvious cruelty. Sometimes it smiles at you over morning coffee, kisses you goodbye at the door, tells you it loves you while measuring out your death in milligs. Sometimes it wears pearls that belong to your grandmother and stands beside you at your mother's funeral while planning your destruction. The tremors stopped completely, 7 months after Sabrina's arrest. The fatigue lifted gradually each day, bringing more energy than the last. But I still keep that medical report Owen brought me in the diner that night, proof that the person who was supposed to love me most was killing me, slowly, methodically, patiently. I keep it not as a reminder of my victimhood, but as evidence of my survival. Against odds that should have killed me, I lived. Despite 4 years of poison, I endured. In spite of a conspiracy that reached into the courthouse itself, justice prevailed. trust once shattered leaves scars that never fully fade. But scars remind us we survived. And in a hardware store owner's life, survival is just another project. You assess the damage, gather your tools, and rebuild stronger than before. You learn which materials can bear weight and which ones will crumble under pressure. You figure out who belongs on your construction crew and who would sabotage the foundation. My mother never got to see justice served, but I think somehow she knows. After all, she tried to warn me, even from her deathbed, even through the morphine haze. Mothers always know when something threatens their children, even when those children are 47 years old and think they have life figured out. These days, when I visit her grave, I bring fresh flowers and good news. The kids are safe, Mom. The family business is secure. And I finally learned what you always told me. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The headstone next to hers remains empty. The plot Sabrina had picked out for me with such careful planning. She'd chosen it right next to the woman whose funeral she used to serve divorce papers, the woman whose pearl she wore while plotting my death. She'd planned everything perfectly except for one detail. She hadn't planned on me surviving long enough to learn the truth. My kids are in therapy now, working through the trauma of what they witnessed. But they're also learning what strength looks like, what survival means, what family really is. Logan wants to be a prosecutor like his Uncle Brian. Chloe says she wants to be a detective like Owen. They want to help people who can't see the danger they're in. Chloe asked me recently, "Do you think you'll ever trust anyone again, like enough to get married?" I thought about it for a long moment. Trust isn't about never being betrayed, sweetheart. It's about knowing you're strong enough to survive if you are. It's about choosing to stay open even when you've been hurt. Otherwise, Sabrina wins. Otherwise, the poison keeps working even after it's out of your system. The $16 million mansion stands tall, no longer a monument to deception, but a testament to survival. Every room she poisoned me in has been reclaimed, repainted, refilled with better memories. The kitchen where she prepared my death now hosts family dinners. The bedroom where I collapsed so many times is where I sleep peacefully, finally, without fear. Gavin Cross's company, Vital Core Labs, Inc., was shut down after investigators found evidence of other suspicious supplement blends sold to spouses of wealthy individuals. 4 other cases of slow poisoning were uncovered, all following the same pattern. All 4 victims survived thanks to our case making the news. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Owen Mercer hadn't knocked on my truck window that night, if his conscience hadn't overruled his paycheck, if he hadn't seen his own daughter and my children's faces. One man's decision to do the right thing saved my life and possibly others. That's the lesson I carry now. Evil might be patient and calculated, but good exists too. Sometimes in unexpected places. In private investigators who choose conscience over money. In small-town diners like Junus Diner, where June keeps secrets and offers sanctuary. In brothers who drop everything to fight for justice. In children brave enough to protect themselves when adults fail them. I'm alive. My children are safe. The truth is known. And every morning I make my own breakfast, pour my own coffee, and taste freedom in every unpoisoned sip. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and share it with others who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the most dangerous threats come from the people closest to us, but survival is always possible. Comment below if you've ever had a gut feeling about someone that turned out to be right. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true stories of survival justice and the strength of the human spirit. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light. Until next time, stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time.